Hello. Good evening. Welcome to Brewing Controversy. I'm Lucas. This is David. And you are now part of our... I was trying to think about how many years we've known each other. We might be almost at 10 years of being political gripe and drink beer buddies.
Yep.
Which, for those playing along at home and here for the first time, is the nature of the beast. So, yeah, we're here. It's Thursday.
Yeah.
I did get your note, David. I'll fix that in a second. Quick production note of something that we just entirely fucking...
Like, seriously, we're just like, oh, wow, how did I forget this?
Yeah. We'll fix that. It'll be okay. I'll wait till you're pontificating on something and go fix it.
That's fair.
Anyhow, if you're here, feel free to say hi. Carrie's here.
Hi, Carrie.
Rob is here. Which he's doing something very on brand for LA, watching a police chase, which is known as a Thursday. I love it. That's great. So anyway, feel free to say hi when you show up. If you show up, when you leave, you can say bye. You can say hi again when you come back. You can ask questions or insert comments, and everyone is welcome, even if you are not in agreement with us, like a right-wing moron. I mean, an American of diverse opinionation.
We'd love to hear from you and tell you why you're wrong.
David loves to explain why people are wrong. So
there's a reason I went to law school. It's because that's exactly
right.
Do what you love. That's what they tell me to do.
It's been a busy week for me, but all better things than having to work in the service industry or deal with trauma from being robbed while working in the service industry. So I can't say that I can compare to your week, but how's your week been going?
It's going okay. It's been an interesting week. I'm finally got off my 11-day slog of straight work. To which, so for those of you who aren't aware, so a couple of weeks ago, while on the job when I was opening the restaurant, I got robbed at gunpoint by a guy with an AR-15, so
it's done wonders for his opinions on guns.
Right. I mean, I already had a low opinion, and it's only gotten lower. But the joke was this week when I went to go talk to the psychiatrist who's helping me with my PTSD. Like he was fit to be tied. He's like, they did what? You worked how many days straight? 2 weeks after being robbed at gunpoint? I'm not okay with this.
Yeah.
So that was a fun conversation to have all this week. Be like, Oh, and by the way, I'm trying to work out with him because I'd like people to see how they treat PTSD these days. It's kind of an interesting process, and I'm trying to see if I can bring some of that on the show and show people and be like, hey, this is how we treat the stuff these days.
That'd be really cool insight information. That's something that people don't really get to talk about very much. And I would imagine if it's you and it's you talking about or showing your journey, I don't think that there's anything that anybody could complain about. Bonus points if you talk an actual medical professional into showing up. And I'm working on it. I've got all kinds of people on the list. I'm going to start gradually massaging to see if they'll come on the show. I've got a couple of activists locally that I know will. And of course, people that have regularly been joining us and commenting have been featured on our party episodes. Yeah. Both Rob and Terry have
and we're still working on getting the brewers from Deadwoods Brewery. I still have their contact information.
Yes.
Just unfortunately, things keep on just popping up, like holidays.
Brewers that aren't afraid to brew a little controversy, are all
right. But first holidays, then Lucas trying to keep his heart from exploding out of his chest, then me getting held at gunpoint. Yeah, it's been a slog here.
It's been a few weird months, apparently. Oh boy. Well, on that note, tonight I'm going to have one but relatively large beer because I have to run on a treadmill at 8 a.m. and get the whole stress test thing, which is going to be a ridiculously embarrassing example of how out of shape I am, and get all the tests, all the data, But by the time this is done, I will actually have so much information on my heart. It's just not even funny. It's expensive information to obtain, apparently. But yeah,
Right.
it's
not-
gonna be
it's not like your
so
Apple
much
Watch does it.
information. Do what?
It's not like your Apple Watch does it.
Well, it does some. But yeah, it's. I signed up for the 8 a.m.
we'll
just 'cause
we'll
I just
talk.
wanted to grab it by the horns and just go.
We'll talk a little bit about that here in a bit because that's my pet tonight is technology. So that's gonna be fun.
Yes, David's taking the pet, and then we have the big topic, of course, a little bit more about the guns. But before we can do all that, we have to jump into the hot take happy hour. Mark is here also. Howdy, Mark. Good to see you, buddy. Thanks for stopping by. Mark is probably in the safest corner of the state for civil unrest in Tennessee. He comes to us from Chattanooga. So
Yep.
when Memphis explodes. So that brings us to the happy hour. It's hot take happy hour where we run down a few little topics that are in the news. And tonight we are starting with the big things that we're seeing in the headlines. And you got the first one to kick off the oh my God Muslim factor that's always present with the GOP. So tell us more about that one, David.
So basically, Speaker McCarthy is trying to get Ilhan Omar, representative from Dearborn, Michigan, off the Foreign Relations, the House Foreign Relations Committee. And for those of you who don't know how this works, so when every 2 years, every time there's an election, the Speaker and the party in power doles out positions on the various committees, and these committees basically act as sort of gathering points for specific types of legislation. Like if something's a treaty, it's going to go in front of the Foreign Relations Committee. If something's about defense spending, it's going to go in front of Defense Oversight and House Ways and Means, because House Ways and Means controls how the budget gets put together. All these committees basically look at legislation, and then they decide whether or not they want to bring it to the floor. If they vote, and typically the party in power, the party that's the majority, holds a majority of the seats on the committee, and so they decide whether or not the bill will come to the floor, and then since they're also the majority on the floor, it probably passes. But they're supposed to mark up the bill and do all this stuff.
And why on earth would you want the opinion of someone that's not white or not Christian, in a foreign relations committee
Right.
of all places?
So basically, the problem that McCarthy has is this. Number one, Ilhan Omar is outspoken on her views on how the American government has addressed foreign relations traditionally, which is arguably, in many instances, somewhat imperialistic. And I don't necessarily.
She also doesn't pull a lot of punches. She's got a bit
doesn't.
of a foul mouth streak, which I greatly respect, and I pretty much love her style in every single way.
She's also made several commentaries on the current situation in Israel.
Another reason I like her.
Honestly, from my perspective, I'm like, it's not anti-Semitic to oppose a right-wing, semi-totalitarian government. I can support other parties in Israel that are trying to do better, and still criticize Israel and say Likud, the governing party right now, are nut jobs. They're Israeli fascists.
I've gotten into that so many times. I've been told I'm anti-Semitic because I don't just bend over and take it from Israel. And my line is, if you happen to be Jewish and happen to be a supporter of that shit, then fuck yeah, fuck you. But that doesn't mean I'm fuck Jew.
Well, and here's the problem: is over 60%
impossible for Christian wackos to understand that.
Depending on the poll, and no matter how right wing the poll is, it always comes out to a majority of Jews in America do not support the right wing government in Israel.
Right.
But
they still expect our government to bend over backward to be pro-Israel, which is really fucked up.
Again, if you talk to a majority of Jewish Americans, most of them would say, no, you don't need to bend over backwards. We'd like you to support Israel, but we'd like you to support it with conditions that limit the power of the right-wing nationalist government that keeps on trying to seize control in Israel. Especially, the slight aside, this week, the Likud basically they're trying to pass a bill which would strip the Israeli Supreme Court of its ability to declare things unconstitutional, which has triggered mass protests in Tel Aviv against the right-wing government. So it isn't just here that we're having a problem.
So what can McCarthy actually do here?
So McCarthy is trying to basically, coming back to how the committee assignments are done, basically all the committee assignments have to eventually be signed off on by the whole House. And it's normally a pro forma thing. Now, last session of Congress, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Representative Gomer got stripped of their committee assignments. And the reason they did, and the Democrats made a very point of this, the reason they did was because both Marjorie Taylor Greene and Gomer threatened the lives of publicly in their campaign materials and at rally events, threatened the lives of other members of Congress. That's why they were stripped of their committee assignments.
Yeah.
The Republicans want to transfer that thought of, well, you stripped our people of committee assignments. We don't like this person, so we're going to strip her of committee assignments. They've already stripped Schiff and Swalwell from their foreign intelligence committee assignments. They've said, no, you won't. You can be on a committee, but you won't be on the foreign intelligence committee.
But they can't change the numbers, right?
No, they can, like it's.
They can
and here's the
replace
thing.
them with less effective, less interesting, boring ass fucking Democrats that won't do anything, but they still have to fill the seat with a Democrat.
Right, and the other catch is this: is that if you fill it with a less effective Democrat, things like the Foreign Intelligence Committee, they can't talk to other members of Congress about what they know, right? Mm-hmm. So if you were to put someone who wasn't as effective in that spot, they might not be able to push efforts on things like foreign intelligence in the same way. But so they want Ilhan Omar off of all committees because they don't like her, and it's become ridiculous. And we're threatened by her, and they've tried to go on this tangent of we're going to punish Democrats. And the thing that keeps on busting my balls on this one and just makes me so mad is none of these members of Congress threatened the lives of other members of Congress.
Right.
They may have said things that you didn't like, but they didn't. I mean, here's the thing. All these Republicans, at one point or another, have said things that people didn't like, right? That Democrats obviously didn't like, but they didn't. But the key thing of why MTG and Gomer got stripped of their assignments was because they threatened the lives of other members of Congress.
If you're playing along, it's Gosar that he keeps...
yeah, I'm sorry.
Here's the thing. Like, MTG is much more believable than Gosar. His shit was fraternal, sophomoric, lame stupidity. I'm on the fence about whether or not it should have been literally interpreted, but what it wasn't was it was unbecoming of anyone.
After January 6th, here's the thing. No, you've got to, every time they say it, you've got to take them at their word.
Well,
After January 6th, you've got to take them at their word.
I get that, but I would have rather leaned on, establishing what's beneath members of Congress as part of the talking points, because that makes it sound less like a bunch of, fragile, poorly adjusted, all the things that piss me off about younger generations. But either way, it's hypocrisy, like you say. I mean, it's, abject, threatening conduct versus, somebody's just willing to raise a fist and pound it on a table and actually use a couple of curse words. Whatever. Hey, real quick before we bounce to the next one, I want to give Rob his update since he participated with the earlier coverage. So apparently another 15 minutes of fame in California has ended with an arrest after a chase. Brian's here. Hey, Brian, what's up? Good to see you. And then Mark asked a real good question about committees. And,
because they want MTG to have access to classified information. This is
the
want her
dystopian future episode.
They want her to disseminate They want her on Homeland Security to disseminate efforts by Homeland Security to stop right-wing terror groups, and they want access to that information so that they can either spin it into federal overreach or they can hand it down to their supporters so that they can avoid being arrested.
Pretty much. And that'll be the next 8 to 10 years of activity and investigations and court cases when we find out exactly how deep that inevitable spy ring goes. So next up is Memphis. It's no secret if you've glanced in the direction of a television or a newspaper, you're aware that in Memphis there were 5 officers that beat the ever-loving shit out of a young man. I'm not willing to call him a young boy. I think that's really frustrating. A couple people I've seen on TV calling him a young boy. He was 29. That's a young man. That's not a young boy. We need to be very careful in how we describe these people that are victimized because it matters to be correct and not be like the right. So the young man was beaten beyond any reasonable limit, apparently. We haven't seen the footage yet. And they fired the 5 cops. Some people have seen it. We haven't publicly seen it. They fired
and while handcuffed, that's part of the big issue is while he was handcuffed, he was no longer a threat. I
mean, among 1,000 other pieces of it that we're going to find out when we see the footage is going to be very clear why all the charges were filed. They had many charges filed, same charges across the board for all 5 guys, which is a very legally interesting thing, not typical of anything. And of course, it's remarkable that 5 cops at all ever were fired for something that they clearly did or had charges brought against them with any level of swiftness. So those are remarkable facts. And then I keep watching anchors and reporters dance around and not say the thing out loud that needs to be said, which is, so we finally fire and charge 5 cops for beating the shit out of somebody. We don't normally do that.
What's different
here? What in the world is the one outstanding difference between these 5 cops and any other group of cops committing a murder? Oh, wait, they're black. I'll be goddamned. And no one is having that fucking conversation. Not even the black journalist, and it's pissing me off. Because that's the obvious goddamn elephant in the room to be talking about right now. It's funny how fast you fuckers fired and filed charges on some black cops for doing some wrong shit. That's weird. Because it takes like literal fucking years to get justice on white cops. So we still have this racism element playing, but we also just have the core element of abusive, shitty, psychologically broken profession. And it doesn't matter what color you are, you're getting indoctrinated into that culture of violence and abuse, and you're going to eventually take it out in yet another street-side dick measuring contest and possibly murder someone. And that's what has happened in Memphis. So now we get to sit and wait, alongside every official in Memphis, for the release of the video, which some dumb motherfucker has decided should be released on a Friday night, because what could possibly go wrong?
I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, you're right. Because apparently this video is particularly bad, and it's bad enough that apparently the local Lowe's and Home Depots have run out of plywood boards as downtown businesses prepare to board up their windows on Friday night. Apparently, insurance companies have been contacted for additional coverage for riot insurance. It's pretty. People are expecting this to go absolutely off the wall. Yes, Brian.
Every Waffle House in Memphis will erupt.
I imagine this is going to be a situation. You know, FEMA has the Waffle House.
Shit is coming. Those are very accurate statements.
Waffle House. FEMA has the Waffle House index of how bad is a disaster. Well, is Waffle House open? Like, if Waffle House is open, it's okay. If Waffle House has a reduced menu, that's pretty bad. If Waffle House is closed, it's really, really bad. I imagine that this is going to be a Waffle House closed kind of moment.
Well, in this scenario, now that we have other recent Waffle House news, this is going to be gauged by, is Waffle House closed and the employees are standing outside with a chair in each hand guarding the building. Olivia's here. Hi, Olivia. Good to see you. She had commented on MTG. She's way too dumb not to get caught, and that's the beautiful part of it. So that'll be wonderful. David, let's talk about tanks. This is the best news. When I wake up in the morning, typically, because Apple did us the kindness of making relatively water-friendly products in the last several rounds, when the phones first became very water-friendly, I thought, oh, this is going to do wonders for my NPR listening, because now I can have NPR and shower. So I'll put the NPR thing running, and it gives me a 15-minute run of everything I want to hear, throw it up on a shelf, and I get my NPR in the morning, washing my hair, and thinking, that's the best news I've heard all day. Germany is going to send some tanks.
Yep. So for those who may not get it, so the German main battle tank is called the Leopard. Just to point out that, yes, all German tanks from World War II are all named after large cats. I honestly would have thought the Germans might have wanted to get away from that, but no, we're just gonna keep with it.
Keep it.
Surprising move, but okay, sure, why not?
Volkswagen didn't rebrand.
So the reason this is big news is this. People have been asking, and especially Ukraine has been asking, for more tanks since the war began. One of the big issues that's kind of emerged is that first the West, the story that's been circulating is that, well, the West is just hesitant to give them tanks. That's only half the story. Mm-hmm. The main issue is this. A bunch of NATO allies wanted the U.S. to lead and give our main battle tanks to the Ukraine, except there's a problem. The M1 Abrams, which is our main battle tank, is widely considered the best, safest, most powerful tank in the world. It has one critical flaw. And I'm going to explain that critical flaw by explaining how the Leopard, the German main battle tank, doesn't have this flaw. The Germans, when they built their main battle tank, assumed the Russians were going to overrun them, and they were going to have trouble finding resources. So they designed their tank to run off of straight diesel. Not, anything fancy. Like the Leopard main battle tank can pull up to your Shell station, pull up to that diesel pump, and get itself fueled up. The Abrams, on the other hand, for the U.S., because we ridiculously over-engineer everything, doesn't just run on fuel. It doesn't just run on normal jet fuel. It runs on super high-octane jet fuel. It runs on the same fuel that we put into fighter jets. Not the 747, the stuff that if you spilt it on the ground, you would have only seconds before it turned into vapor. It's so high-octane.
Well... Okay, but on one hand, there's an efficiency to that if you're the American military. I can see it. But yes, it does create a problem. And also, all tanks, to be fair across the board, you don't just hop in a tank and take it around the block and you got the hang of it like you just took a car out of the Enterprise rental. There's some training, there's some learning curve.
There's some other stuff. But I mean, generally, the main problem has been this. We wanted the Germans to give the Ukrainians Leopard tanks, because that way the Ukrainians can take the fuel that they've already got and put it in the tank. If we try to give them Abrams, which we're now having to do, it creates an additional burden for the Ukrainians to try and figure out how they're going to put fucking fuel in the motherfucker, because they've got to get ridiculously high octane fuel into the tank. To keep it functional.
Well, and also Germany didn't want to be by themselves. Germany took a position like, well, we'll do it if other people do it, but it doesn't look good for Germany.
That's the thing is alone. That's not accurate at all, because the Poles tried to give their Leopard tanks to Ukraine, and Germany said no, you can't do that.
Right.
And so it wasn't just Germany doing it alone. It was the Poles were asking to give tank. Were saying, "Hey, we've got some main battle tanks."
There was some discussion in the diplomacy side of the news that the Germans were trying to make sure they weren't all by themselves, because it's not a good look. But also, they didn't want to be the only target for retribution, which I could see that. I mean, whatever.
What? No. This is the Germans trying to play put a hold card in their back pocket
Yeah, maybe.
If the Ukrainians lose, the Russians won't be as mad at us.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, no, we're going to go make sure that the Ukrainians don't lose.
That's the that
And
part.
that's what we're going to go do.
Which is now where we are. And bonus,
Listen, Wilhelm.
the Abrams is going to be the newest, sexiest, digitally driven version of the tank. So like they're getting the badass out of the American side.
Well, and just to explain, one of the reasons the Ukrainians wanted these is because German tanks are designed to basically, if the engine runs, the cannon as long as the engine runs, the cannon should fire. NATO tanks, on the other hand, are designed with high protection and high mobility in mind, which is one of the reasons the Ukrainians wanted them. So, like, one of the things that a NATO tank can do that a Russian tank can't do is that a NATO tank can shoot accurately on the move.
Yeah.
So, like, the NATO tanks have this really cool stabilization feature on the gun, on the main cannon, so that that driver can be like, can have his foot to the floor, being like fuck, running away, oh, dodge, and the gunner can be like, I got this, it's cool, boom, 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 boom. And so even though the tank is doing this, like jumping over hills and shit, the cannon's being like, yep, I still got it.
Now I know what it sounds like when you play World of Tanks. Fuck, gotta go. I have a question for you, David, before we move to our next one. I saw some stock photos or whatever of different tanks, and I saw something really funny, and since you're a weird war fanatic, you probably understand what this is or is for, and probably some of the people here. They had an image of a tank with like 4 barrel drums, like metal oil drums, built in a tower, coming out of the little top manhole thing, and a dude sticking out at the top. And I have no idea what it was for.
It's for amphibious.
I thought maybe that was
it's so that water doesn't, because the only part of the tank that's normally not waterproofed or made water possible is the top top cover.
Okay, so by doing that, they move the water accessibility line up and keep it out of the water.
Yeah, keep water from coming in the top.
Because I had this mental image of that tank, like at the last throes of the last moment of desperation, and the dude comes all the way up to the top of the little tower with a, physical personal weapon, and like, and he's up on this little tower, and it just was a mental image of.
I should also point out one of the other cool things that the Ukrainians get, at least in terms of NATO tanks, is our tanks can shoot down incoming missiles and shells. They have little defense systems that are designed so that when they detect the shell coming at them, right, it spews a wad of metal in front of the shell to make it explode before it hits the tank.
Excellent.
So the tank armor doesn't take the hit.
I'm all in on all of the whoop ass to embarrass and destroy Russia to the furthest extent possible. So I'm down. David, tell us what's going down in Tennessee with boneheaded.
Oh God, this is
lack
stupid.
of science, dumb twats.
I'm gonna bring up this quote because it's just such an awful quote.
This is the Lee quote you were telling me about.
Yeah, here's the thing. For the past 15 years, Tennessee has gotten this grant from the Centers for Disease Control to combat HIV in the state. Mm-hmm. It's for detection. It's for treatment. This year we're turning it down. It's not a some sort of conditional thing. It's just free money. The reason we're getting this, or we're deciding to do this, is because we don't like Planned Parenthood, which this grant has nothing to do with Planned Parenthood, but it's
for HIV treatment, right? HIV treatment generally.
Yeah, and so the justification given was that we don't like Planned Parenthood. Federal money, some federal money, not this federal money, goes to Planned Parenthood, and therefore we're going to start rejecting as much federal money as we can. That's the justification. And Lee's response was, "Oh, we're going to pass our own new funding proposal inside the state assembly." And here's his quote. They want to focus particularly focusing on human trafficking victims, on transmission to first responders, and on transmission from mothers to their babies. Those are the populations we want to focus on. I want to point out the main vectors of HIV transmission are, or main groups are, homosexual men. They're normally affected by it, and intravenous drug users. Right. Those are the primary, because
it's kind of always been that way.
It's always been that way.
It's not new information.
Because there can be bleeding during anal sex, and because HIV and intravenous drug users can share needles, and blood can get that access to blood is what spreads the disease.
So when you first brought this up, I thought we were going to go all the way regressive, and this was going to be, we don't want no HIV fixing because that's for them gay monkeys. And so I thought it would be like a different brand of ignorant stupidity. And it turns out it's a other brand of ignorant stupidity, meaning shit that basically doesn't happen. We don't have a large problem with mother-to-child transmission. We don't
not a big issue.
A large problem with first responders. I mean, really, right now, it'd just be great to get some first responders. How about that? Right. How about we make it so that people want to be nurses again and get all these harassing right-wing twats in a box and sink it somewhere never to be found? Because, who gives a fuck if they're protected if they can't work at all? So we just don't have these problems, but they're going to, of course, redirect and invent.
Well, because they don't want any money to go to gay people, and they don't want any money to go to drug users. We want to focus on the good Christian population that's been affected by this disease. But the problem is the good Christian population isn't that good Christian, because if they were, in most cases, they wouldn't get HIV. And secondly,
if they fit that stereotype, then why are they engaging in these two other risky behaviors?
Right. Somebody did this thing which brought you into contact with blood of an infected person, and now it's spreading outside. Because that's originally, when we saw the disease come out of Africa, it originally, people wanted to just say it was a gay disease or a druggy disease. But the problem is, from those people just interacting with things around them, other people got infected, right? It's sort of, it's one of those things of, if there's a contagious disease, you address where the disease is.
Right. Olivia points out the litany of training and precautions that are already taken to avoid this problem. I mean, it's just not a problem that we have to have a need to solve. But that's the right wing, man, looking for a problem that sounds good and scary to the dipshits that make up their base. I remember when the right wing used to say low information voter as a pejorative against the left. And man, have they decided to capitalize on building an empire on low information voters. Oh. So speaking of the GOP's stupidity, this is a super easy, quick observation that I made today. I went back and watched the State of the State address from Governor Whitmer, and I noticed the photo op taking place. And I want to put that photo op, freeze frame of it up, because they all got to the dais and posed for some photos from the media. And as soon as I saw it, I thought, oh boy, I don't even need to be there. And it wasn't very well mic'd. You couldn't hear hardly anything the right way at all. So I had to assume the sounds, but it was easy to imagine. So here's the image. And as soon as they started doing this, I thought, Oh, you can just hear the racists and the woman haters and just the whole GOP. You can just hear through the video the oxygen of the right being just gasped out of the room. Like, oh my goodness, what a nightmare for the GOP. Look at these black men and these white women and all of them Democrats. Oh my God, it's just it's glorious to me as an image, but it's also hilarious to me to imagine all these fuckers squirming in their chairs when they had to watch this center of our power in our state now stand together for that photo op. So it really gave me a nice chuckle right at the beginning. Otherwise, I remain satisfied with my governor upgrade because the story you just talked about and the places that we're heading are a really good example of how much better we're doing here without having to have dumbass Governor HVAC like you have.
Oh no, I do check job postings in Grand Rapids. I want to make that clear.
Now, I will say this: I wish somebody would. She's never going to get retrained, but listening to Whitmer talk for an hour solid really is annoying, no matter who you are. She's not the best public speaker, but I guess she gets past it with "fix the damn roads." So,
hey, at least it's not Clob anymore.
So, David, this is the part of the show where it's time to drink and talk about drinking. Ladies and gentlemen, we do occasionally talk about beer in between the politics, and that brings us to our first break. We're going to talk about a couple of them right now. So it's time. What you drinking? So I don't know if you've poured or broken open something that you want to start with, or if you want me to start.
I'll get it. So one of the things that I was thinking about the other day, especially now that I'm in charge of dealing with a lot of local breweries on a very direct basis and buying their products. I don't, even though I really enjoy talking about the super esoteric, super crazy off the wall beers that I want to share with people because they should know that they're out there. And we've actually been talking about retooling how we present our beers on the show. And we're probably going to start doing that next week. But one of the things that I've been thinking of is I need to focus more on all the cool stuff that's happening around me. Lucas is normally pretty good about focusing on all the stuff that's happening around him. I normally go further afield because I'm nerdy, and this is like it's always fun for me to find something completely off the wall. Always
beaming shit up from Europe,
right? So I wanted to really go back to basics this week because I had such a great conversation with the brewers at Tennessee Brew Works. I just had such an amazing conversation with them. They're such great guys. We had all sorts of fun talking about stuff, about different breweries, about different brewing styles, about different styles of beer. Just really great. These guys like beer, and I like beer, and so like we all got along. These were not just your average salespeople that came to talk to me. These were people. Yes, they were salespeople, but they really enjoy the art of what they do. And one of the things that they want to do,
like beer and are fully qualified for the Supreme Court. Gotcha.
Right.
I wonder how many of our political jokes go right over certain people's heads. Like, not the people that are every day, every time, the people that you see comment all the time, those people get the jokes. But I wonder if some of the people that stay quiet or watch later, there's got to be a segment of regular Joe that's just like, I don't get it. So you went like, this is so not you of a beer. This is a light lager.
And I want to point out, so I talked with them about this, and they have a theory, they have an idea about this, and I wanted to revisit it because I feel like I've had it before, but I hadn't really thought about it in the same idea, in the same breath. They think they've got something to take on your standard domestic draft lager / Pilsner American.
Please.
They want to take the place in the average, at least especially in Tennessee, but going forward, they think they've got something where they're like, if you drink Bud, or if you drink Mick Ultra, or if you drink Miller Lite, I've got a beer that isn't wildly different, but it tastes better, and you're going to enjoy it more. And as a consequence, they actually, I don't know how far about this I'm allowed to talk about from my conversation with them, but they're looking to make aggressive moves against some of these big breweries with how they want to push this this urban hiker lager.
Well, I mean,
And I gotta
I'm always a fan when I'm trying to talk somebody into trying some craft beer. I'm always a fan of having something in the lineup that I can hand the person and say, "Look, you like Budweiser. I want you to try this. Give it a chance. I think you'll like it." Now, I'm very aware. It is what I do. That brand loyalty goes a long way, and it can even be interpreted through taste and that sort of thing. So I've had plenty of people where I've handed something that is objectively a better lager to a Budweiser person who still swears the Budweiser tastes better. And it takes a long time to get past that. But I really encourage craft brewers to have that kind of thing in their lineup to give that entry, that gateway.
And that's what the thing is. That they're dropping the name craft. They're making a point of saying we're dropping the name craft. We're not going to call ourselves a craft brewery anymore. We are just simply a brewery. Like people look at craft and they think crazy off the wall stuff.
Yeah, that's fair.
And we're not making a ton of crazy. We do every now and then. We enjoy like pressing the limits, but we're not we both talked about Tactical Brewing in Orlando. About like as one of those places that really wants to push the envelope all the time. We talked about Creative Artists, which is another semi-local brewery that really wants to push the envelope all the time. They're like, we like doing that sometimes, but we want to get basic beers right too. And I gotta say, this lager is super enjoyable. It's very easy drinking. There's nothing about it that's wild or off the wall. It has a very smooth malt note. It has just the tiniest hint of hop to it to give it some interest, to give it some character. But as an American lager goes, this is, I would argue, about as good as you're going to get. And I wouldn't mind. Like, this is definitely one of those beers where if someone put this down in front of me, I wouldn't. This is not something I'm going to turn my nose up at. This is a solid.
It won't be like that one time when I was in downtown Nashville with a bachelor party, way before it was cool to be in downtown Nashville with a bachelor party, and the groom to be just ran around handing out Miller Lights to all of his buddies and all of us guests, and he was just so proud of himself. And I was like, "Thanks, man." And then as soon as he turned around, I'm like, "What the fuck am I going to do with this fucking bottle of piss?" And I found a way to like pretend, take a couple of light sips, and then just like turn it over on top of a trash can anytime he looked away to make it disappear real fucking fast. I would rather be confronted with a much better option anytime, like you just said. Have it set down, drink the fucker, instead of you. How can I get rid of this?
Yeah, no, this is a solid. This is a solid. I mean, as lagers go, this is. I would not feel like I was cheapening beer if I walked into a bar and they're like, "Well, we got Bud Light and Miller, and we got Urban Hiker." I'm like, "I'll take Urban Hiker."
Yeah,
I will definitely take an Urban Hiker.
Right.
Like this is even though you can say this in the same breath as those things. It has a lot better profile.
Very nice. I do agree with you and their assessment from a business perspective. The line between what is brewery, what is craft, that's a little bit different now. And I don't think that we've done a very good job as beer appreciators, maybe not leaning on craft quite as much, because it is true that the things we think of as craft, because we've been around the appreciating hobby, etc., long enough to view it that way, it really isn't necessarily the right word anymore. Also, Rob points out it's an insult when someone hands him a Coors. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, like they look at this and like, if someone says they're a Coors person, hand them an Urban Hiker,
right?
And that's a flavor profile that's an easy move for them.
Yeah,
to go from that Coors flavor to this Urban Hiker, and I can see it. But the thing is, it's just better. It
Yep.
actually has flavor notes. It actually has a clear malt note,
It's
which is
described as a
I
subtle
appreciate
malt
it.
sweetness balanced by honeydew and floral hop aromas and flavors. Crisp, refreshing. 3.8 rating with a decent amount of contributions and a 4.2 alcohol, so it's a slammable party beer,
Yeah.
keggable beer.
Oh
Shit,
yeah.
a keg of that at an average rager would go a long way,
and
or
and
not.
and just and I don't think I'm saying too much, but I think a lot of people who might be in the market for a keg for a rager will be when they're looking at how much it's going to cost them for say a Coors or a keg of Budweiser, and
Mhm.
how much it's going to cost them for a keg of Urban Hiker. I think they're very soon going to be very pleasantly surprised.
That's a good thing to look out for. Good news. All right, well, my one beer for the night, so I'll review now and continue sipping because it's an unreasonably large can. Um, I am doing the single and trying to go low key. So I don't have a rule for my test tomorrow that I can't drink. I can't eat or drink anything 4 hours in advance, which is part of the reason 8 a.m. sounded good because I won't know or give a shit at 4 a.m. whether I'm drinking or eating anything. Um, so I can get up and push through not having breakfast and then go get breakfast. So I'm doing Four Giants from Founders, and I picked this up in the single can cooler at my local grocery down in the corner. And I love that it's an enormous can. I'm gonna put it right next to my giant ass head. So it amused me that Four Giants came in a giant fucking can, and as you can see, it's a 19 ounce. Um, so that's like one and a half. It makes your little can for your little your little urban hiker look so puny, so itty bitty. um, so Four Giants and the Haze of Destiny is the full title here. It's an Imperial Hazy. Um, I've had this before. I may have reviewed it before. I don't remember if I did.
No,
Um,
you haven't
I'm a
reviewed
big
that before.
fan of this one. Yeah, not quite a tall boy.
It's
um,
it's a it's a big
for
boy.
me, like I'm not going to say gold standard anything in the IPA realm because that's not my home base. Now I might start throwing around gold standards and barrel aged where my heart lives, but as far as a an imperial hazy, this is one of the best that I've had, and it's reliably a good go-to. So, like a lot
And I
of
guess
times, if I go over to Founders Tap Room, or if there's a selection of Founders, or this one's involved, like I'll gravitate toward it because it's a very
did,
reliable choice as
did,
a good brew.
did they borrow Three Floyd's artwork team for that can? It,
It's a little more cartoony than the Three Floyds thing,
Floyd's. Oh yeah,
but it does have a little bit of that kind of wild vibe. And I think each of these, if I'm not mistaken, each of these art renderings represents one of the hops because I think that's the deal on this is that it's got four hops.
yeah.
Um,
Which
I was
hops?
looking for the list of, but for some reason it's not in these descriptions. But um,
I mean, it's got if it's a hazy, it's got to be Citra, maybe Cascadia.
oh, this is
Uh,
four of their favorite recipes for Imperial IPAs into the Ultimate Imperial. So it might not be the four hops, but I think the characters represent those other IPA recipes. Anyway, I think it's a great combo. And they've done some others. I think there's like a Four Giants tropical version, if I'm not mistaken. I'm looking it up real quick. No. I love that my keyboard goes to sleep when you don't use it for very long.
yeah.
So
I mean, I'd guess. I mean, if it was four hops, I would guess it'd be Citra, maybe El Dorado. I'll tell you the one that I actually had a long
here it
conversation
is.
with.
Four Giants Tropical Treasure is a spin on it that's actually really good to grab when you can get it. I think that those other Imperials could have been different hops, but I don't know if there's any guarantee that there are four different hops involved in this one. But this sucker is a 3.9 rating with a shitload of ratings. It's a very solid 3.9. on Untapped, and it's a 9.2%. So it's not like, really, really big heavy. It's not a wuss. It's right down the middle, I think. That 9% mark is a nice, oh cool, I can drink that and I can get a feel. But I'm not gonna drink it and be like, well, I'm done. Time to lie down. So anyway, I like it a lot. It's one of my faves. It's pretty widely available here. I don't know how far out any distribution for it goes, but if you have the opportunity to find it, go find it. Go try it. Founders for Giants.
Speaking of hops, I just want to say it's like things that are happening in the brewing world. Have you noticed like the new proliferation of Idaho 7?
Not really, but that doesn't mean it's not happening.
I've been seeing it everywhere these days, and I for those of you who are beer drinkers, I want you to be aware when you're approaching a beer that has Idaho 7 in it, because it's important. Because if you're not prepared as the average beer drinker, or even as the average sort of like beer enthusiast, let me put it to you this way: Idaho 7 takes some getting used to. So be aware, like if you try a beer and you're like, oh, they used Idaho 7. For those of you who aren't aware, like Idaho 7, basically, Brian would love it, because we're gonna give Brian his 2 seconds here in a second, because
Brian's,
Idaho 7 is basically like taking a fistful of like just a massive fistful of pot and shoving it into a beer can.
Well, that's why it's seeing a surge, because cannabis is seeing a surge. And
maybe that's what it is. I mean,
people want to pull that flavor profile over to their beer.
It's gonna shock you. It's gonna shock you.
Very good. Good to know. Well, speaking of our man Brian, we are typically joined by Brian's edition, and one of the most all-American things we can do these days is just to feature a little something special. When Brian is joining us alongside the drinking, there's often some other involvement. And in this case, it's his old friend Rebel Sour. 26% THC and solely to blame for 5+ hours of lost time today. And for those that don't really have a full background, Brian is somebody I used to work with, that I've kept up with for a long time. And, I have a lot of people that are willing to go and check out wacky shit I do, which is, why Brian probably came to look at this show. Brian was always known for saying the funniest shit, especially if there weren't customers around. And these kinds of little one-liners are exactly on brand. So I love that. Solely responsible for 5 hours. So sticky, dusty, smelly, what more do you want? And Rob points out he's his cannabis brother from another mother. So very true. And with all these vices we're discussing, these are the two of the things I come into these heart appointments with right at the top. Is like, I need you to know off the top, I'm into some recreational treats, and I'm into craft beer, and I can tell you exactly how much of each of these things in a given week, and I don't think it's very much, and you need to tell me. I don't want you to tell me, but tell me if I can't. And they're like, no, that has nothing to do with any of this. Keep going. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. But I am considering the one beer option for the show as a way to sort of somewhat reduce. But it's good. I told them, just don't come for these little pleasures in life. Please leave those. So let's move into the big baby, the big discussion. So it's the guns, stupid. So look, I mean, what the fuck, man? Like, we live in a country that hasn't even gotten the first month of the calendar out of the way. And we've racked up 39 mass shootings. I forgot what the definition of a mass shooting is. Isn't it 3 or more?
Yeah.
Or something?
Yeah.
Because I think, like, when you're having one of those nerd rules lawyer arguments about what is a few and What is a handful? And
Yeah,
what
well,
is it?
that's not really a lawyer argument. That's more a researcher argument of
Yeah.
like
So I guess
what category
mass
do we put
needs
it?
to be more than a few, so it's more than
Yeah.
three. But I don't know what the official. We could be wrong about the official number, but essentially, by the official measure of more than one person getting shot by one person, um, we're racking up more than one a day on the average.
Yep.
And most recently, I've been kind of joking because I like to cope with humor. It's not funny, but it's also kind of funny to look at California and go, okay, so you had 3 mass shootings, 2 of which were perpetrated by old Asian dudes right around Lunar New Year. Do we need to be asking any questions? Is there a cult that we don't know about? Like, can we just double check why there's a heavy representation here? Because I'm really genuinely curious. What is it that just like why now, right? Like if you were gonna snap and you're an old Asian guy, why now? So I look at the Lunar New Year as a commonality. Is this a thing? It's like, well, it's New Year time, got to go nuts. Like I feel like there could be a story there.
I,
Um,
there, I mean, there could be like a trigger about like because Lunar New Year is basically
it's an accounting of your previous year as part of
well,
the
it's
tradition.
it's also for many Asian cultures, for Japanese, Korean, not as much. The Vietnamese have the Tet thing, which is a little bit different, but for the Chinese, it's like it's their Christmas, right? It's their big singular holiday of the year, and there's probably some stressors involved in that. In terms of there's a lot of family, maybe family issues, other stuff. But I don't think any of that. I don't think any of that is the real thing. And I want to come answer Brian's thing. I say guns aren't the problem. They're not sentient and they don't act on their own. Here's the thing, Brian.
If people are the problem, and why the hell we give the problem a gun? I do like this line because
yeah,
it is true, and we can also point out the guns can be the problem when we allow people to soup them up with extra equipment that makes them more efficient killers, and we allow every state to just make shit up as they go as far as gun laws are concerned. We have some unique afflictions in dealing with the object that is the gun that do, I think, create more of a scenario where the people that are indeed truly, you do have to say, okay, fine, yeah, the people are really wielding this, but what are we enabling? And that's where I get down to it.
I would argue that it's very much the type of guns that we're looking at in the United States. It's very much the type of guns that and I want to point out it isn't just the magazine capacity. It isn't just the caliber of the bullet. Those are central factors. Those are central players to the story. It's also that we really enjoy selling military style weapons. We really enjoy one of the things that keeps on striking me, and one of the things that will happen after these mass shootings is this. People will go out and find out what guns these guys bought, and the availability of those guns will plummet. They won't plummet because the manufacturer rethought selling those types of guns. They will plummet because hordes of gun enthusiasts will go out and they will buy that type of gun because now they know that that type of gun is effective in killing more people faster.
Well, and they're also on their false freak out of, oh, they're going to take it away now, and they fall for that.
Good. I mean, you know what? At this point, having had one pointed at me, and this continuing increase in mass shootings, yes, we need to take more guns. I remember all through the 90s, and the thing is, when it was black people shooting up inner cities, right? That was the narrative that was given. Gun buybacks were considered good policy, right?
Right.
Oh, the city's going to say, all right, if you sell us your gun back, I'm going to give you cash in hand. And it in large part, it worked. It got a lot of guns off the streets.
Well, it
The
also
irony,
addressed a root problem. A root piece of the problem was financial. So, whatever your reason is, I'm trying to protect what I do have. I'm trying to, maybe I'm going to sell some drugs or do something illegal, and I need the gun to kind of protect the effort that I've got to make the money that I don't have. It all boils down to the disenfranchisement of wealth in disadvantaged populations to the advantage of the, colonizer, if you will, the imperial white supremacist.
and that was irony.
So you
Gun
give some money, you solve the root problem.
Gun buybacks were supported by conservatives and liberals.
Yeah.
When it came to African American communities, but who didn't sell their guns back?
Mm-hmm.
White people. White people aren't selling their guns back, and I want to point out, for things like the NRA, the NRA
Honkies didn't need to, man. They looked around and said, I got plenty of money and privilege. I think I'll keep it.
But I mean, it's like the NRA is one of those stories where it's like they started out as a sportsman's organization that argued for more gun control.
Yeah, and safety was a big piece of it.
And safety. And then the 1970s rolls around, and now it's you need to arm yourself against urban thugs. And inevitably, when they did their promotional materials, an urban thug would always be black.
Absolutely.
This has become an issue, and in order to protect their ability to continue to arm white supremacists, which is, I would argue, what the NRA is about these days. So they want to arm white supremacists.
Mm-hmm. At the very least, white nationalists.
At the very, or if you want to call them white nationalists, however you want to term people who think that
I think there's a Venn circle would be made from that, and it's probably a lot tighter than your average Venn. But still, I think here we go. I will demonstrate this with coasters. White supremacists, white nationalists. It probably goes something like this, but still,
right?
I think there's a segment that is just nationalist, paranoid. Take it from my cold, dead hands on top of my metal trailer roof that thinks they're legitimately going to take the same gun you were held up with, and they're going to defend their property against the invading Uncle Sam, which, at the end of the day, doesn't even know their name or give a fuck about their tiny speck of existence in this universe.
And again, as I want to point out, as the Ukraine has already pointed out, they're not going to come kill you with a squad of soldiers that your militia is going to fight. They're going to pop up behind you with a $70 drone and a grenade and blow you all to fucking hell. Why the fuck would I waste, trained personnel when all I have to have them do is be like, this is like a video game.
Right.
I mean, what? Why? Why? What? No. I would argue that in each of these situations, we're dealing with high capacity weapons, and it's the high capacity assault. It's the combo. It's high capacity coupled with, isn't this like a badass gun, right? This is a cool badass gun. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like the people who one of the issues that they used to have with T-Birds and Firebirds, right? The first American blue collar sports cars.
Yeah, the accessible American sports car. I hate to use that phrase because it's more of a muscle car-ish.
But it's a muscle car slash sports car, but and what would happen is people would wrap those around trees like it was like they were like the act was going out of style, right? Yeah, and the reason is because all of a sudden I've got this idea that I'm going to go fast.
American death sleds. I like that. That works.
Yeah,
that's good.
I'm going to go fast and
eastbound, and damn, there's an oak.
You're right. Damn. But I mean that's what happened is because they marketed these as these super cool, super fast cars, and we just want to sell a bunch of them.
Mhm.
And they encourage people to go fast. When you sell and people get, I hear a lot of gun enthusiasts be really upset, like, oh, it's not an assault. There is no such thing as an assault rifle. I'm like, I mean, I feel like some military historians would beg to differ with you. But the style of gun and what you're selling, right? What Smith & Wesson is selling, what Charter Arms is selling, what Bushmaster is selling is this is a weapon of war. This will kill the enemy.
It's really marketing, and I mean, not that I would be an expert of 20 years in marketing, but it's really very much marketing lifestyle. It's a lifestyle product. It is not a tool. It is not a utility. It is a lifestyle marketing, and the lifestyle being marketed is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much you are not the success that you dreamed that you would be. It doesn't matter that you peaked in high school. It doesn't matter that your dick is a little smaller than you would prefer. It doesn't matter whether or not she gave you her phone number or not. All that matters is that you can be a badass too. By having this, you can be a badass too. And it capitalizes on whatever their level of paranoia is, but ultimately, at the end of the day, it's making up for the same personal failures and insecurities in the target market, disguised in some other ways.
Well, I mean, there's a classic example of Daniel Defense, right? Which is Daniel Defense has an entire marketing campaign about trying to get dads to buy their kids AR-15s. Mm-hmm. Right? About like, teach them young. And like showing like a little 8-year-old with an AR-15.
Yeah.
Right? But slimmed down and lightened so that they can carry it.
You know what?
What the fuck? What the actual fuck?
I know how that game is played, David. I know how that game is played because I went and worked adjacent to and for the company that mastered that game, because you played Oregon Trail 2 and you didn't play it on Windows. Yep. It's always a good idea to get the kids into your product. Always. That's why we banned cigarettes from doing it.
Yep.
And so, yeah, it's I think, and that's one of those avenues that I could see us pursuing, right? I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to ban that.
I love this comment. It brings inclusion
to incels. Yeah, that's good. I think banning the advertising and promotion to children would be a thing that we could get away with doing. There are other things that we can do in our current spectrum, and there are things that we could do if we would pass smarter laws. But I've lost all my patience, and so has a good deal of America. I mean, apparently 70-something% of America is down with a lot of basics. But I think one of the first and foremost things is we have to stop letting the states make shit up as they go and do whatever they want.
We have to stop
letting the first one to say, federal daddy tells you what the fuck to do. I'm a very federal top-down guy.
But we have to stop the Supreme Court from constantly saying we're going to ignore the entire first clause, which, again, I'm going to repeat this for everyone in the fucking back, because God knows I've said it God fucking how many times. You are
going to law your grammar.
In law, the first clause of a subsection is controlling. So if you say, when you're wearing purple, comma, you may not drink water, right? If I show up wearing green and you sue me for drinking water, I'd be like, wasn't wearing purple. That's the controlling clause.
There you go.
May not, yeah. The first clause, a well-regulated militia. So, and this is like, it's gotten to the point where even conservatives recognize that it on a legal standpoint, it's not good. And they've tried to argue that regulated meant something different when they wrote the Constitution.
Right, they were trying to draw a line to the concept of a regular army. The term regular as in regular army, they've been trying to do that. They've been trying to say regulated meaning normalized. Like they've been trying to
Yeah.
spin it in all kinds of weird ways, but it wasn't that fancy. It was just regulated.
Yeah, it's really just regulated. It means that there's rules about the militia. And we know that there's rules because, again, if you want to go to for an originalist perspective, which I fucking hate, but
We know.
if you want to use an original, because again, I firmly believe in using the tools of the enemy against them. So if you want to go to an originalist perspective, the state of Massachusetts and every state legislature and its rules on guns would love to have a word with you about what well-regulated means. Right? I mean, these were the founding colonies, and there were rules about. Listen, this is what a militia is. If you aren't in the militia, then you don't need a fucking gun. The only time when we start getting fuzzy about gun laws, about who gets one and who doesn't, ironically, it was the opposite direction, and more people didn't get one, because New York was one of the first states to pass strict gun laws, and they were mostly about property requirements, because they only wanted rich people to have guns. They were very afraid of poor people having guns. And then we go to the Western expansion, at which point they were afraid of everyone having guns because it was a fucking problem. Right?
Well, let's get to that second phrase. Being necessary to the security of a free state. Now, I understand there's some debate over the word state here. And to me, it doesn't matter
literally
if
means
you
state.
interpret it as a state or as the state, like the U.S.
No, it means a state. If I'm going to use the tools of the enemy against them,
The originalist interpretation, states are
state.
sacrosanct.
When I say state, I mean state. The security of free members of the Union. In other words, every state was supposed to have a militia, right? And in order to ensure the security, again, using their own
your state to be able to stand up if it decides it doesn't like the big baddies.
No. It's not about the big baddies. It's just about general security. Remember, Whiskey Rebellion.
Didn't they always kind of keep this possibility that, you know what, a state may decide?
No, that got kiboshed at the Constitutional Convention. It got kiboshed at the First Continental Congress. It was Franklin's big statement. Several statements. One was we can all hang separately, or we can all hang together.
Well, yeah.
In other words, we're together. This is not something any of us get to back out of once we pull the trigger on this.
Well, in a way, this outsources the security of the nation to a certain extent. It says to the states, you better be ready to participate. You better be ready to defend security, yours and ours. And you better have a militia on hand.
Again, you're right? kind of you're kind of misreading this. No, it was
I'm just running
security.
all the theories that have nothing to do with individuals.
Yeah, no, I mean for internal security purposes, because after the Revolutionary War, one of the first uses of the militia, there were two major uses of the militia immediately after the Revolutionary War. One was the Long Knives. Which was a westward military expedition against Native Americans by the Continental Congress, which was they got a bunch of Virginia state militia and some regular U.S. Army to go out.
That'd be a really interesting movie or TV series.
Yeah, because it was in retaliation.
Have you ever done that story? That'd be really interesting.
For the Long Knives?
Yeah.
But that was one of the first instances. The second instance was the Whiskey Rebellion, or the second two major instances were the Whiskey Rebellion and the Shays Rebellion, which were both internal rebellions, and those states were expected to marshal their militias and put down the rebellion. And they did, right? So when they say
this is all pre-National Guard kind of shit.
Yeah. So a well-regulated being necessary to the security of a free state. In other words, you can have internal problems, and we expect you to be able to put down these rebellions
Go
with a
fix
military
your bullshit.
right.
So in a way, would it be fair to say, and this is gonna, this will really freak out the Second Amendment wackos. I mean, to me, it sounds like the National Guard made this whole situation obsolete. Yeah. So, so if we agree to take that interpretation, and we move forward, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So, a well-regulated militia, that is a presentation of an idea.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to go into the grammar and English part of this, diagramming. Parenthetical statement, being necessary to the security of a free state. That's like a justification of the whole concept.
Yep.
You could take it out if you wanted to, and the sentence still makes sense. A well-regulated militia, it's necessary, means that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. In other words, we got to be able to keep a bunch of people around with some guns that could be called up to fix our shit.
Yep.
And if it's going to be well-regulated, then it might be,
And basic no,
this
and
is
here's
the kind of gun that you have to keep. Or
and here's where this amendment gets confused.
We will gather for training this many times. Like, there's plenty of regulation that could be imagined.
You have to use history to understand where this amendment comes from. Charles I is where this amendment comes from. So Charles I, when he was King of England, he did a lot of things. He basically didn't want to rule within the rules that had been established in the Kingdom of England, and it was at that point just the Kingdom of England, in terms of what was normal practice, right? If you wanted money, you had to go ask Parliament. If you wanted to raise, and the thing is, he had certain other powers, like he could raise an army, right? But he had to pay it, right? So how was he going to pay it unless he asked Parliament for money to pay it? Things like that. So, and Charles I didn't like any of those rules. Charles I thought that he should be in charge
That
and
sounds
not have to
familiar.
not have to ask Parliament all the time for stuff. So what Charles I did is Charles I busily went around all the time, finding ways to get around Parliament to do stuff, raising money and doing stuff, and also passing laws and regulations which normally wouldn't require Parliament, but that he could do, including, of other things, and this was considered an anti-poaching measure. It was actually fairly uncontroversial for its time, but generally speaking, unless you were part of some sort of yeomanry guard, like the sort of the English version of the National Guard, you weren't really supposed to have a weapon. You could have a sword, right? But a firearm or a longbow or a pike or things of that nature, they were generally like, you're not supposed to have that. That's supposed to be a military weapon that belongs to either the yeomanry, who are like the landed militia, or you're part of the Royal Army. And one of the things that when the English Civil War broke out, when they overthrew Charles I, that they kind of relied upon was, we'll just take all these guns that we've got and we'll just hand them the fuck out because we need more bodies to get on the front line, right? And so that idea of yeomanry, that idea of who should be armed, changed significantly during the English Civil War, because all of a sudden a lot of people had guns. And one of the things that when Cromwell took over and the parliamentarians won, one of the things that they actually kind of endorsed for a hot second was, well, we should be armed. We should, the people should be able to rise up. That didn't last too long, and I want to point out why. Immediately after Parliament took over, there were two massive rebellions. Not in favor of Charles I, I want to point out, but just radical nut jobs. London itself was seized for a week by a group called the Seven. I'm gonna mess this up. It's like the Seventh Kingdom, who believed that if they overthrew Parliament, Jesus would return immediately and establish the kingdom of God. And we forget shit like this, right? Like this. This is stuff that we forget. But the city of London, not a neighborhood, not a part of it. This whole fucking city of London was under the control of a religious cult for 7 days that was armed with guns, right?
That's always good.
The Levelers were another group who were not as extreme as those guys, but they did definitely believe in some version of proto-communism where all persons would suddenly be like no nobility, abolition of private property, all those sorts of things. They launched a major rebellion. And so afterwards, I want to point out, and that's probably where that well-regulated comes from, is even the Cromwell government was like, so about arming everyone. Maybe not. Maybe a bad idea. Because it turns out half of you are nut jobs. And, I mean, this is Cromwell. He's already kind of a little bit of a religious nut job. But I mean, it's that sort of idea that came into power. But even after Cromwell was replaced by Charles II and all that happened, that idea of having some sort of citizen army remained. Because, again, one of the big gripes of why the English Civil War happened in the first place was because Charles I raised an army without Parliament's permission. And so that was the idea when they went into the colonies, right? Of, okay, we're not going to ever have a situation in which any one of us can be Charles I. We're not going to have a situation in which the president can raise an army and it's not with the permission of the states. Therefore, the states will have these citizen armies, right, that they'll control. So when we say the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, what they're actually talking about is the people as in people living in states, right? Those states can have militias. The federal government can't reach down and say, no guns for Maryland, right?
So the way this gets interpreted by the right, of course, they ignore the militia part, or they interpret the militia part as oath keepers. They interpret the security of the free state to be them determining the terms of the security, not the state determining the terms of the security. And then they dive in on the people bearing arms and not infringed part. That's the part that you always hear about. So it's a very selective interpretation. And the funny part is, this is the only place where these assholes usually seem to not want any rules. They're all for finding rules against free expression or, fucking who you want or, smoking some weed, whatever it is. They're all for regulating a lot of other personal freedom, but they always want to give this one a free pass based on their misinterpretation. So I'm losing my patience, as I tend to do, because I've had arguments with David about the AR-15, for example. I've told David, is it really, though? Is it really the fight that we need to have? Can't we just let somebody, if they want to have their AR on their 5 acres of daddy carved this off of the cotton farm land and gave me a trailer, let them have it inside the boundaries of their land to feel like they've got their dick extension and they can defend against Uncle Sam's black helicopters? But I've started to lose my patience with these motherfuckers and decided that I like David's, no holds barred approach.
And I want to point out, I had that no holds barred approach before I had one pulled on me.
Oh, and definitely.
And I also want to point out something else about the stupidity of how we're doing this. Like other countries have access to guns. You can own an AR-15 in Germany, right? The only difference is that you have to have a license for it. You only get to use it at a gun club, right? You don't get to just like randomly walk around town with an AR-15, right? If you want to own an AR-15, fine. Where are you going to use it? Because using it for self-defense doesn't make any... I want to point this out. One of my other pet peeves is that a pistol is a lot better for self-defense, and you're allowed to own a pistol in Germany. Right? You're allowed to own a pistol.
I'm a pretty big supporter of the idea. Like, yeah, okay, fine. Let people have a handgun for self-defense. I think it's more than enough.
I don't have a problem with that. But, I mean, if you want to own a high-capacity weapon, you can do that at a gun club. That's where you're going to use it. Because trying to use it for self-defense, again, the optimal engagement range for a carbine or assault style, I'm going to, just to placate gun people, I'm going to use the correct terminology, an assault style weapon is about 200 to 300 yards. 3 football fields. If you're engaging a target, your optimum engagement envelope is anywhere between 100 to 300 yards. So the distance of a football field, how are you defending yourself from imminent death at 100 fucking yards? As the Cowboys, they can't even pass 100 yards in a game.
Damn.
A pro athlete whose only job is to toss a ball 10 yards at a go has trouble with it. But you're afraid of something that's 100 yards away from them.
Brian points out, and this is really a statement of the core of the problem, we have a unique gun-based culture.
No, we do not. That is a myth. That is a myth invented. It is invented.
David, I don't know, because we really did take the time to say, hey, we're concerned about who has the weapons. Let's write it into our Constitution.
So did the Dutch.
Expand.
So, for those
to
of you...
me, the gun thing is born of the trauma, if you want to say it's trauma, of England's oppression.
How many years did it take the Dutch to get independence? How many years of war?
Never gave a fuck, so you're going to have to just go ahead and tell us.
Just guess a number. Guess a number.
200? I don't know.
No. 70. It took 70 years of near constant war. The 70 years war. The 70 years war. I'm going to say it one more time for the people in the back. The 70 years war. 70. That's more than the 8 it took us to get independence. And with Spain being on the same continent as them, right? The Spanish were a lot easier to. You're within reach. I can touch you.
Yeah.
The Dutch had 70 years of fighting to get their independence. And the Dutch didn't even look at everyone and be like, yes, everyone should have guns. Ironically, there was, I will say this, for a long time, there was a more conservative Dutch political streak when it came to independence and using weapons.
Price says if it took them 70 years, they were lousy shots. That's pretty funny.
I want to point out the Dutch have a population that's like, what, 1/10 of the Spanish? No, Brian. They were very, very good shots. There were just a lot of Spanish.
A larger workload.
There was a much larger workload. but I mean, no. Other countries have had. I mean, hell, the French Revolution, all these other things,
Yeah,
all these
that's
other
fair.
European cultures have had major wars where they had to fight to secure rights,
So what
including.
about that statement, David? The nihilistic view that, but at this point, we're just too far in to fix it.
No, I mean, ask the Australians, ask the British if we're too far in to fix it. The British had a thriving gun culture, and after one major school massacre, they were like, nope, 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 not doing this, not doing the American thing, shutting that down right now.
Yeah.
And they seized every last gun. The Australians had one major massacre, and they passed a law that said, yes, you can own guns. You can even walk around your property and use them. We understand it's Australia. Half the things on this continent want to kill you. It makes sense. Even the toads we accidentally imported or kind of purposely imported are poisonous.
Right.
Uh,
I
I
was
mean,
hearing
it's
about that.
this is not a hospitable place for
Yeah.
human beings to live. Yes, you can own guns, but if you need to own a long gun, in other words, something that will kill something at a distance, if it's not in your hands, it's in a safe with a lock. And not only that, by registering your gun, which you have to do if you want to own a long gun, you also waive your right to warrantless search and seizure. So, in other words, if the court says,
This is Australia.
yeah,
Nice.
so
I
in other
like
words,
it.
the court can say, you've been convicted of a felony. Don't worry, we're not going to wait for you to come give up your gun. We're going to come get it for you. Oh, there's been a domestic violence charge, like domestic violence incident at your house. When the police walk in, they're going to your safe, telling you to open it and give you the gun, right? And if it's not in the safe, you're in real deep shit.
So how do you? I mean, I don't see these storage laws like the governor here in her state of the state. That was one of her things was storage and security laws for firearms. I just don't see that being terribly successful or enforceable.
No, it's terrible. But wait, here's the thing: is when businesses agree to take a license, right? They lose certain privileges because that's the deal. If you want a license to do business, you lose a privilege. What privileges do you lose? I can't turn away health inspectors, right? I can't turn away OSHA inspectors. They have an absolute right to enter that business, right? And check. And if necessary, file a report that says, hey, so-and-so business has a pile of oily rags and a basement full of slaves and is...
I love your scales of escalation in each level. You
Right.
went from oily rags to basement of slaves like that. It was
Well, see, I like to do the up down because then my next thing was going to be a refrigerator of chicken that is stored 2 degrees above safe serve limit. They have to be shut down, right?
Right.
Then we have to shut this down. So.
So
we-
let's say we could do that. One of my favorites. I'm a big fan of a few things. I'm definitely a fan of the registration of individual firearms
Oh, no.
at
If
any
you-
level. I don't care if it's a sidearm or a long gun.
If you buy a gun, it should have to be registered, A, with your state, and B, with the ATF.
And I feel like this is such a bullshit thing to not be able to do because the government knows everything about my car. The government
they know
knows
everything about your car.
about my car. I mean,
They know about your purchase. I mean, like everything except guns. And I want to point out one of the dumbest things. So we have our federal background checks, and guns technically, a lot of guns do technically have to be registered. But in order to protect the privacy of the owners and prevent anything, all those records cannot be digitized.
Right.
So in other words, I can't build a database of people with guns.
And that whole concept is based on this bullshit notion that we have to allow these people to have their fantasy, that they've got to be able to have secrecy and be able to one day stand up to the oppression of the
You are not standing.
government.
I want to point this out. This right-wing fantasy of a military junta in the United States, and that is part of their fantasy, is that the military is going to rise up.
Yeah.
One of the most is the United States.
In which
military,
case, why do you even need a gun, Cletus? They'll give you one.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Well, the only reason they need a gun is to kill you and me and black people and
Right.
Asian people and gay people and then whoever else they feel they need to move on to killing. At the end of the day, that's what this is about, right? At the end of the day, that's what this is about. This is about I want to be able to threaten people at will. I want to prove that I have power and that I can threaten you to kill you.
Mm-hmm.
That's what this is about.
At the end of the day, it's about the dick thing, the not getting her phone number thing, the peaked in high school thing, the not as successful as you imagined you would be thing. At the end of the day, it's about all the shit that they market to.
Yep. I mean, it's one of my great fears is if you look at some of the right wing militias that are coming out of the woodwork now that have gained traction. The Boogaloo Boys are one of the scariest ones to me. The Proud Boys are scary because they're organized, but the Boogaloo Boys really worry me because the Boogaloo Boys
because they're not organized.
Well, they're explicitly not organized, but they're also explicitly just simply accelerationist. They are simply we own guns and we want to provoke violent interactions between people and government in order to create anarchy in which somehow we believe at the end of the day, because Boogaloo Boys typically aren't people who are going to go onto Atomwaffen Division or any of these hard right-wing organizations. There's normally some overlap, but a lot of the Boogaloo Boys are just simply, we want to burn down society. And we're going to do it by killing people.
Mm-hmm. Well, my favorite current solution, I'm always looking for how can I make a difference in my neighborhood or at the local level. And I've had the epiphany. So last Tuesday, I had coffee with the mayor. It was a long-awaited, had to make an appointment several weeks in advance. But it was a really nice time. You've already heard me say all this because we've talked about it personally, but, I always suspected that I would like Mayor Bliss here in Grand Rapids and that she's probably really just a nice person that may be too nice for the moment. We had a good chat, and I didn't realize that it is entirely legal. This came up in our conversation about security in the city hall. It's entirely legal to the point that it's like encouraged in the state of Michigan to come packing to public meetings. Because I alluded to the fact that there's no metal detector and stuff, and that it strikes me as amusing when you talk about wanting people to feel safe to come and say what they want to say at public meetings. Well, in Nashville, to come to a public meeting or to drop off a fucking Post-it note in an office at the city hall for any business at all, you had to do the late 80s version of airport entry. You had to go through a fundamental X-ray tray metal detector arc to get in at all.
Yep.
And it strikes me as weird here in Grand Rapids that that's not part of the deal. And then she mentioned, well, we can't prohibit guns in the chamber. Like, oh, what? And then she pointed out, before COVID, when the progressives first started getting elected here in Grand Rapids to city offices, that the Bubba Brigade would come packing and sit in the chamber to attend the meetings.
And you know,
armed.
the sad thing is, the only thing I can think of as the response to that is that leftists have to come armed as well.
Well, it's funny you say that, David, because I've started to plant some conversational seeds that I think all the brown and black folks in this town that want change, who are legally carrying, should start packing.
And I'll be honest, you want to know what happens? What happens when they do that? Look at what happened in California with Reagan. What did Reagan do when the Black Panthers took his pro-gun stance and they said, "Great"? Well,
I don't recall.
No! This is a great story. This is a great story of the '70s. Reagan came to power. It's like, oh yeah, guns, good idea. Like, I love guns, and the Black Panthers were like,
Okie
really?
dokie.
We can fuck with this, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so the Black Panthers started showing up everywhere, being like, "Yep, here we go, armed black people." And all of a sudden, Reagan was like, "Okay, wait a second." And then it'd be like, "No, we don't have. I don't have a felony conviction. I don't have any. I am legally empowered under every California statute to walk around with this gun."
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, Reagan was like, "You know what? We need stricter gun control."
Right. That's my point. I would love to see the activists that are legally carrying to start, and I think you have to open carry. I don't think concealed works. I'm not sure. I haven't looked it up. But I have started to plant the seed of thought here in Grand Rapids that the brown and black activists should just start showing up with their piece on their hip to every commission meeting.
Well, fuck that. Like, you can outsource this shit. Call the Black Panthers.
Well, we kind of did that, and it didn't work out great.
Yeah, I mean they're a little flaky these days.
That claimed to be with the Black Panthers from like northern Indiana or some shit. He got in trouble for the media conveniently described it as cocking his gun, which is not really even how that even begins to work. He popped his slide to be threatening when an asshole old white guy was driving a car toward protesters and acted like he wasn't going to stop. And they were talking to him sternly, saying, "You are going to wait for these pedestrians to get out of the way." And he had some cranky words. He's like, "They're in the damn street. They need to move." And he starts to kind of move forward or whatever. And this dude got a little hot under the collar and went, "Yeah, really? You think so? Kink. You think so?" And kind of menaced him a little bit. But it was nothing at all worth getting worked up about, like the fucking fragile ass white motherfuckers that complained about it. But he didn't really help the protest look good. So there's a little bit of a baggage there, and I don't pretend to understand all of it. I mean, when I first went to a protest here, I thought, "Oh, cool, the Black Panthers are here. That's neat. I'm happy with that." And they had their guns. So I don't really know, but I think it would be a nice way to call the bluff of the politicians here that say that they want a safe discourse in the chamber, to start seeing young, minority, disadvantaged population, whether they're white and LGBTQ or black or brown or whatever, or, you know, bonus points for Native American, which is a new political dynamic I have up here that I never dealt with at home. I have a completely new rail going on in politics.
Yeah, Brian mentioned the Trail of Tears earlier. Yeah. Welcome to Tennessee. We used to have a Cherokee population.
Yeah, right. So,
you know,
I think it'd be interesting to see how that works. See if that put a little old school NRA style pressure on the situation. But anyway, you know, we don't bring this up to have any fucking solutions, because we know that it's not going to get better until it gets way worse.
No, there are solutions, which is you look at the court dead in the eye and be like, and I would love for someone to finally stand up to the current version of the Supreme Court and look the justices during questions dead in the eye and be like, how would you feel if your daughter was killed in gun violence? Because here's the thing, they've made this personal.
I don't think they're capable of empathy.
Thomas has made this personal. Roberts is not Roberts in the same way, but Alito, Kavanaugh, all these conservative justices have made this personal. I would really like to see some lawyer with the testicles to be like, you know what? I may get banned from the federal bench, but I'm going to go ahead and lay my nuts out on the podium right here, right? And be like, I want you to try. I want you to try and now justify. So your daughter was killed by a gunman with an AR-15 in a shopping mall. Your daughter was, and like they'll try and spin it and say like, oh, you're threatening our children, and be like, you're threatening the children of 440 million Americans.
Yeah, really.
I would like. I mean, one of the things I feel like is essential for correcting the current path of the court. Is basically giving them a dick slap.
Yeah, you're right about that.
And being like, I want you to actually think about what you're doing instead of sitting there and being like, well, I'm just here to be a jurist for the court. I'm like, no, you're here to be a originalist, know nothing dickwad.
Yeah.
That's why you were put here, and I'm going to challenge you every step of the way, and I'm going to make this personal for you every step of the way. I'm going to not back down from you because it's the lawyers are trained to back down from judges, right?
Yeah, right.
We're trained in law school to be like, don't antagonize the judge, don't do that. But I feel like at this point with the Supreme Court, we need a class of lawyers who are willing to stand up and say, no, I'm going to purposefully antagonize you. I am going to look you in the face because you've said these things.
Great idea.
And I'm going to go get like a lobbyist job or something after this, after you all kick me off the federal
After I make all the
court.
headlines, get famous, write a book. I mean, please do me a
Right.
favor. Come down on me.
Right. But I mean, I honestly feel like that's become necessary because I feel like with these gun cases, you need to force the court to justify its opinion in a way that they know sounds wrong. Because that's the thing. None of these people are so stupid as to know that what comes out of their mouth isn't trash.
Right.
Right? They're doing it to serve an ideological purpose. I actually wrote a whole screed about something the other day about how one of the main problems with modern conservatism is it's not any longer tethered by reality. It's all about an ideal. And they know what they're saying, at least in terms of enforcement and governance and everything else, is trash, but they want to do it to serve an ideal and to look them in the eye and be like, it's going to be your kid next, right? It's going to be your kid that gets a 223 through the leg. And will they live? I don't know, because a 223 does a lot of damage. It tumbles as it flies. It makes a massive exit wound. Well, gee, the paramedics, who you don't think very highly of anyway, because you don't really think very highly of anyone who's not rich and white and your brand of Christian, there might not be enough paramedics. They might be able to get there in time.
Roll the dice.
Your kid is going to die.
Roll the dice.
Are you prepared to live in that world in which these guns exist for someone to walk up to your kid and kill your kid? And I don't think anyone's actually put it to the Supreme Court that way yet.
Bonus points if it comes from another justice. God damn it. Well, let's drink some more, or at least in your case, I'm going to keep drinking on mine.
Yeah, I have my new beer.
Time for David's next review with another round.
All right,
Okay,
so I'm gonna have to pull up the name on this bullshit.
Jesus Christ! He wrote a novel to describe this. I mean, what the fuck?
So this is
the direct opposite of everything that David introduced with his simplification of the earlier beer. He is going to more than make up for it.
So
holy shit!
This a couple of things have happened with this beer. First of all, it's Swedish. And I'm gonna bring up the name real fast because I have it. Do I have it on Untapped?
What, Omnipolio or?
Yeah, I was trying to look up the location of Omnipolo.
Is it Polo or Polio? I guess it'd be Polo because it's Sweden. Stockholm.
Yeah, but specifically it's Sydneyberg, Stockholm's in Sweden.
That is I just plugged that into a map, and that is drilled down very specifically, like by the neighborhood.
This is apparently a Swedish microbrewery, not just a craft brewery, a microbrewery, which I managed to get some of at my local place. And it's part of a series called In Plenty, which I'm sure is some bastard English interpretation of something that means something entirely different in Swedish. But it's a imperial pastry stout.
Sounds great. You have my attention. You had me at pastry.
It's got big chocolate notes. I'm going to give it that.
Okay.
It's got really big chocolate notes. Honestly, here's the deal. I like a little bit of alcohol note, and this has just the right amount of alcohol note on the beer. I feel like I'm looking for a little bit more complexity on this. So for those of you who don't know, like what I really enjoy in beers is like a lot of that huge, like distinct flavor transitions, right? Of we mix this spice and this spice and this spice, and as you taste the beer, you get different flavors, and you
Right.
can tell where they are.
Right.
This is giving me like slightly different flavors. It's giving me like, so what it's giving me is it's giving me like a little bit of vanilla on the front, and then
That
a
is
choc,
in the profile.
and then a big chocolate. It's got a hint of coffee, I would say, just a hair.
They say toasted coconut after cocoa nibs, but those combined, that could make sense.
Yeah, toasted. It could be toasted coconut. I would call it coffee-ish. I don't think in most cases that there's a huge difference between a coffee note and a toasted coconut note in terms of especially when you mix in
fair.
vanilla. Especially
Yeah.
when you mix in vanilla. So if you've got vanilla and coffee, you can get a toasted coconut, or you can just call it vanilla and coffee. It's however you want to portray it. It's not super easy drinking. I'm not gonna lie. Like getting through this growler is gonna be a slog.
Is it? They call it a thick imperial. Is that part of it?
Yeah, this has definitely got a lot of. This is a thick beer. This is going to be a baton death march here.
And is it good? Just not complex enough, or does it fall off somewhere?
I think it's really good. I would definitely
Okay.
drink a snifter of this. I'm definitely going to drain this growler of it. I think it's a good. I think it's a very good beer.
Are you getting the
I-
marshmallow?
But that's the main thing. I'm not getting the marshmallow. I'm not
That's
getting.
funny.
I'm not getting sweet off of any of this. I'm getting vanilla.
Because
and-
it's supposed to be a variation of the In Plenty, which is everything but the marshmallow. So
Right.
they specifically call out that we took the version of already decadent beer, we added an extra touch of marshmallows. So everything else is basically the same, and it's a 12%, like the whole series, as you might have implied.
You know what's beating it up is that alcohol note. It is where
Yeah.
it should be sweet.
I could see that.
The alcohol note is crushing it. And again, here's the problem: if you want a sweet beer and you want to make it high grav, which is very possible, it's very possible, but you have to account for what's going to happen with that higher grav, right?
Right.
And I think with this, if you allow that alcohol phenol to enter the mix, it's harder to have a sweet note when you have an alcohol phenol, because the alcohol phenol it wants to take over. It's just like with a whiskey. Like, one of the reasons I don't like Jack Daniels, right, is Jack Daniels is arguably a very sweet whiskey, right? It's arguably a very sweet whiskey, but the alcohol note from the whiskey crushes the sweetness, and, like, to me, it makes it like vile. It just makes it sour,
Right.
right? And this isn't quite sour because it's not the alcohol is there, but it's not punching me in the face. It's more like, poking me in the side, right? But it's enough that it's, if there is a big sweet note there, it's the most I'm getting, like, that sweet might be like a sweet chocolate, because it's not quite. It's more like if you took a bite of, like, good candy bar dark chocolate, right?
Okay.
Which, it's not super sweet, but it's got a sweet note in there. They added sugar at some point, that. That's what this is coming off us. And when it comes to, like, a big fluffy sort of, like, in your face or very presentable marshmallow flavor, I'm like, maybe marshmallows aren't the same in Sweden. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, it's well loved. It comes in at a 4.1. Like I said, 12%. It sounds like a good one, but it could be
good.
Improved.
It's good, but, like, again, like,
or not described as marshmallow.
I would not describe this as marshmallow. I would describe this as a chocolate stout. Very easily as a dark chocolate stout. Like if they just described this as a dark chocolate stout, I've been like, yeah, this is a good dark chocolate stout. I'm not getting all the way up to the pastry level, though. I'm really not. And I feel like it's that alcohol note that's beating it down. So I would definitely classify this as a 3.7, 3.6 in that range. Because, I mean, it's a very solid drinker. I, would enjoy a mug of this, especially if it was super cold. I'd be like, fuck. Oh, alcohol, good.
Right. That makes sense. Well, in a quick side note, the Preds are playing. Go Preds! In the second period,
we've won the last couple, so I've been a little bit excited.
Second period, it's 3-3.
We're still making the playoffs.
But it's tied 3-3 in second period.
With the Devils, that's impressive. That's like New Jersey actually figured out how to field a team at something.
I'm going to keep that open over here so we can be aware of what's going on as we proceed to the end of the line, which will be rounded up, David, by your pet topic this evening. So David wanted to talk about AI and all the flap. AI, I don't know. Are we okay? And while we were talking earlier,
you changed my title. That makes me feel.
I didn't know you had a title.
I put one in there. I put Rise of the Stupid Machines.
Oh, see, I didn't realize that was Republicans. Well, I did you a favor, though. I participated in the AI phenomenon. While we were talking earlier, I asked an image generator to give me Obama on a horse in space. Now, this is another one of those under a rock things. Like, if you've just been in a coma, you might not know about the phenomenon of AI chatbots and AI art and all that shit. It's a pretty active topic right now. And David, I picked up some cynicism in your reception of the AI phenomenon. So lay it on us. Sneeze first, then lay it on us.
There we go. So a lot of people are figuring out
that coming, so I can slam your mute button.
So a lot of people have been figuring out about Chat GPT, which is this new AI program out there. And Chat GPT is part of the same thing about, like, this AI art, all of this, and people are figuring out, and when I'm looking at it, I'm not impressed.
You're not impressed with the output, or
I'm not impressed with what like with the AI itself, and I want to point out why I'm not impressed and why I'm not afraid of like people's jobs. Like people are like, oh, it's going to take over like nursing jobs. It's gonna automate lawyers. It's going to automate all these other things. It's going to automate customer service personnel. Right? It's the next stage. It's the next stage of automation. So, and I want to give it just a quick bit of history, right? So, people first learned that automation could hose up their jobs. Oh, you finally found the button. There it is. David's time machine. In the 80s, when all of a sudden a lot of car manufacturers realized, hey, I can have a robot do like these big robotic arms do some of this shit, right? And this is one of the things that strikes me as frustrating about understanding how automation impacts people, how technology impacts people, which is, so the reason they could just put a robot arm to do some of these things is the robot arm only had to go to one place or one general place. If it, like now, today, like it has a camera and it can kind of understand a little bit. Oh, the car isn't exactly where it's supposed to be. Where am I? Oh, I'm supposed to put the bolt here. Okay. That's what a bolt hole looks like. So that's where I'm supposed to put it. But we're not talking about hyper advanced machinery. We're talking about machinery that's given instructions, right? And this is one of the things about chatbot, about Chat GDP, about even the
GDP.
or GPT.
Your economist snuck in Freudian style.
Right? Or the alcohol, one or the other.
What? Yeah, or both. Your drunk economist snuck in. Which, if you're playing along at home, at least 50% of economists are drunk.
It's very accurate.
You have to be
incredibly accurate. Yes, it's incredibly accurate. But no, these AIs, these what they're calling AI, is still only doing what it's being fed. Right? It's only the amount of data that it's being fed that's different. Right? It's, oh, I found a way to give you more information and have you process it faster. But you're still only aware of what you have been given. And this is one of the big differences between a human being and an AI. And this is one of the things that pisses me off about people. Oh, Chat GPT is going to take away all these. No. Why? Because it doesn't know how to invent, create, adapt. It can't adapt. All it can do is simply go off of what it's been told. Now, I'll grant you, there are a lot of people out there who I've encountered whose only ability is to read from a script. If that's you, I have bad news.
right.
But, I mean, if
Tier 1 tech support may be in trouble.
If your name,
people like me who lose all of our patients with Tier 1 may also be in trouble because there may not be someone that cares about anger listening to us scream into the void about how we would like a more advanced technician and preferably someone who pays taxes in the United States. Thank you very much.
Yeah, if you are a foreign Tier 1 tech support employee, your job may be in trouble.
This is me not crying over that one because I was opposed to that in the beginning.
But
I will say this, though, David, the Chat GPT made the news today for earning a B in a business management exam at Wharton, among other things.
That makes perfect sense.
I'm not sure who that's more insulting to, the AI or the average MBA jackass. I think I know.
I feel like with the way Wharton and a lot of business schools have been operating, I feel like it should be insulting to the AI. That's all. That's all you gave me. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay. They made him think about like the GPT passed like the medical board and passed the bar exam and passed or not the bar exam. It passed the LCAT, the entrance exam to law school. Which I want to point out, the LCAT is actually all logic games. So it's actually like if you could like there's a lot of it is taking a piece and like another piece and another piece and another piece and keeping them all steady and then figuring out where each of them goes. Like it's a puzzle. Like they're puzzle games. Mm-hmm. Is essentially a lot of what the LCAT is. A lot of the LCAT is puzzle games to see how you can handle logic. So that doesn't surprise me at all. Same with the MCAT. The MCAT is, again, a bunch of puzzle games that are, for an AI, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Well, and we've touched on art in a previous show. We talked about some of the art and copyright and all that kind of stuff. And that stuff is going to keep moving along, and we're probably going to end up talking about it again. And we're not really talking about the art piece of it tonight. We're talking about more about the general.
Because I don't want to point out, it's not genuine art. We're not talking about someone who's making a value judgment, right? The AI isn't capable of making a value judgment.
Yeah. It's making monkey see, monkey do, monkey assemble.
Exactly. So, like when Lucas asks the AI to assemble that thing, the AI says, "Okay, what's a picture of space? Okay, these are pictures of space. I will build a composite picture of space. What's a picture of Obama? Okay, I will build a composite picture of Obama. What's a picture of a horse? I will build a composite picture of a horse.
Right.
I will build a value based on colors and dimensions, a value based system in which I can create a quote unquote piece of art based on these requests, right? Obama riding a horse in space. There we go. There is no originality to this. It's not drawing. It's not creating an original piece of art. It's drawing on other pieces of art, which you can argue that other artists draw on inspiration. But they're not copying, in most cases, another artist's work piece for piece. They're creating an original piece of work from their mind. And it's the same thing when solving most problems, right? That's the down. Like we keep on calling this AI. It's not actually creative or intuitive. It simply It doesn't have original ideas. If you limit its source of information, it has nothing, right? It doesn't come up with gunpowder, right?
Right.
It doesn't come up with in other words, if there was no Renaissance, it would not know how to paint a Botticelli, right? If there was no Renaissance, it would not know how to paint a Mona Lisa. Right? It only knows what we've given it. Right? Which is we've given it a lot of information, but it can't work outside of that. This is one of the big challenges about real AI versus this sort of accumulative AI that we have right now, which is
right.
You know, there was a
it's like a glorified chat bot. Like
it's a chat bot. It's a chat bot with more servers to handle process load, is what it is. It has more. It has the ability to handle more process, therefore ask more questions faster, and therefore present something that seems more human-like. But at the end of the day, we have not progressed to anywhere near the realm of an AI that can genuinely problem solve. And people are like, "Oh, we're approaching." For those of you who don't know, like the one that constant complaints I hear is like, "We're approaching the singularity." this point in which technology and biology are indistinguishable. We are so far away from anything resembling that. All we have is something that can take what we get. Again, it doesn't ask for anything new.
It's like a theatrical version of that, in a way.
Right. I mean, it doesn't ask for anything new because it doesn't know how to ask. It doesn't know what it wants, right? It doesn't have wants. It doesn't have thoughts. It just has data. It has pure raw data that it cranks through hard and fast. And people are like, "Oh, chat GDP is going to replace these jobs." How big is your server rack, dude? Like, legitimately, like the size of this room?
Yeah.
The size of my house? The size of a city block? The size of 10 city blocks? Because the thing is, it's got to be able to field those requests, crank through those requests simply by querying the data that it already has. It can't ask for new data. It doesn't know to ask for new data. Human beings, when we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, ask for new information, right? I go out and I'm like, if someone posts a thing about beer, right? Just in this past beer review, right? This, right?
Yeah.
So this says it tastes like toasted coconut. I don't. The thing is, when I tasted, I taste vanilla and chocolate. A chat GPT. There we go. Sorry. Chat GPT doesn't know how to evaluate the difference between those two, or that in reality they might actually be the same thing, right? If it's talking about toasted coconut and I'm talking about vanilla and chocolate, I might be talking about toasted coconut. Those two flavors can be very similar depending on who you're talking to or what you're talking to. This is something that it can't understand because it says, the data says that it's toasted coconut. Right? This is one of the things that pisses me off about people who are constantly like, AI is taking over. AI is shit. AI does one thing, and it does one thing very well, which is it compiles data into usable forms, right? That's it. There's no difference between AI and a thresher, right? In terms of realistically the functionality of the two things. And for those of you who don't know what a thresher is a tool that ancient farmers used to use. We still use a version of it that separates wheat kernels from their protective husk, right? Because we can't eat the husk of wheat. We can only eat the kernel of wheat. We can only eat that little grain. And so, we built a machine very early on in our development that would separate what you've probably heard it, the wheat from the chaff.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's all. Like, most of these AIs are basically glorified data threshers.
That's probably a pretty accurate description. While we were talking, or mostly while you were talking, but I went and I started fucking with the image one again. And I did 3 images because they give you limits unless you pay and shit.
Yeah,
so I've been bouncing around. So progressively, these are going to get more hysterically silly. So clearly, someone needs to teach AI what a porter looks like, because I asked for a barrel-aged toasted bacon porter craft beer, and it generated ambers.
Yeah, that's not right.
I asked it for Kevin McCarthy as a hooker, and I don't know what's under this not approved image. but I recognize this actor, this Asian actor. I don't remember his name, but this is definitely an Asian actor, a celebrity. I cannot think where I've seen him. And the closest they did Kevin McCarthy was give him that ridiculous hairline. And for some reason,
how was Kevin McCarthy Asian? I don't.
ruby red nips, which I found to be kind of hysterical. Now, I will say this, like, generally speaking, if I, if you didn't know what I had asked for, this is not terribly crazy of a bad image, except for the fact that there's a towel, apparently, or a toga, growing out of his deformed Quasimodo hump or whatever.
Oh wow, yeah, no, that's pretty bad. Yeah,
but otherwise, it's almost a good image. My favorite one, I was really hoping for good results here because this is where I started. I decided to save it for last because it's the silly one. Hulk Hogan as Buzz Lightyear eating a pizza was my attempt. What I got was not Hulk Hogan. But definitely the green thing is the Hulk.
Yep.
As Buzz Lightyear and
a
as
pizza. So again, like that's the thing.
And what cracks me up is the almost pristine, amazing, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore, Space Ranger Noir on the left-hand side of the screen that is so fucking good that I think I'm going to save it for a profile image somewhere. And so those are my
it's a data thresher. It's not real AI. It doesn't think, it doesn't ask questions, it doesn't have any sort of intuition
for the Alien franchise, is what you're saying,
right? Well, no, and I want to come back to an example that keeps on being used that we've both encountered before, which is, well, AI is going to take over the legal practice, and my constant refrain to everyone who kept on saying that was, I want to be there the first time someone who says, well, I'm going to represent myself pro se with my AI lawyer. And the AI lawyer tells them to object, and they say, I object. And the judge asks why. And the person representing themselves with their AI lawyer walks up to the bench with that laptop and says, well, this is what it says. And the judge looks at them and says, so you're spending the night in jail. Not because you're guilty, but because you just walked up to my bench with your laptop.
Stupid. My God.
You're going to be in contempt for 24 hours. That's how that's going to happen right now.
I think the general idea being that we don't necessarily have a lot to worry about just yet.
We really don't. And the thing is, ironically, until AI develops way beyond this, the singularity is not coming. Terminator is not happening. Skynet's not happening. We're
but
good.
For the love of God,
I will say this though: there are a lot of
sci-fi villains and terrible ideas.
There are a lot of really rabid capitalists that I'm sure would love to fire you and try and replace your job with Chat GPT. And let's see how that flies.
Second. Absolutely. Anytime. As soon as possible. Always. Around every corner. Well, thanks for assuring people that they don't have to totally freak out. Hopefully the AI won't meet the weird server robot that they're experimenting with down the street at New Holland and end up costing us all of those jobs. Which is hysterical because it doesn't actually hand you your food. You have to get up and take your food off the tray. So that is a big fat fuck all that when it comes to going out to eat.
I want to point out McDonald's has been trying a completely automated restaurant.
Yeah.
And they were really excited about it.
And it fails.
What? Have you seen any more posts from that restaurant?
Nope. Well, before we go, I will throw a quick update in the mix. Now the Preds are up 4-3 over the Devils with 10 minutes left in the game. So we're probably going to go and watch the end of that game. But yes, indeed, go Preds! And
I'm wearing my blue and gold.
There you go. We'll see how it all pans out. If anybody can shit the bed in the last 10 minutes, it will be also the Preds. So,
the Cowboys of the NHL.
Anyway, as always, thank you for joining us. Please spread the word, invite some friends, tell some people about these two lovable asshole crazy guys that drink beer and slather your face once a week with a little bit of liberalness. And we will let you get back to your normal life. I'll let you get back to your normal life. I'll get back to get back to my getting ready to get up and run on a treadmill at 8 a.m. life. And in every way we can, we say thank you and good night.
Good evening.
And
good luck.